Enough is never enough of the boys. Oh, you messed it up.
So close.
Do we want to run it again, or should we just live in failure?
Yeah, well, we're living in your failure, Cleveland.
Oh, no! I'll just leave. It's fine.
We're the stuff, and we're here to talk about the stuff.
Wait, are we the boys? Are we the stuff?
The line is blurred. Will we ever know? All I know is that I'm Matisse Van Rossum, and I'm the Joker, baby.
Hey, it's relevant.
Not to this episode of the show, but that's what the Joker does.
But to the times we live in.
Zeitgeist.
The Joker is an agent of chaos when we're talking about the stuff and not the Joker.
Well, I'm
Just to make that clear for everyone listening.
Chocolate Chip Charlie, also known as Ben Sheets.
Chocolate Chip Benny.
Yeah, there you go.
I am the Stay Stuffed Marshmallow Man, Cleveland Mosier.
After this completely disastrous introduction, which I feel like is suiting for the film that we're going to talk about, we are talking about The Stuff, which is a film from 1985 directed by Larry Cohen, starring Michael Moriarty, Andrea Marcovici, Garrett Morris, and Paul Sorvino. And it is about a delicious, mysterious goo that oozes from the earth, which is marketed as the newest dessert sensation. But the tasty treat rots more than teeth when zombie-like snackers who only want to consume more of the strange substance at any cost begin infesting the world. That's the IMDb summary. I think it's pretty good.
Pretty excellent, yeah. Well, this was my pick.
It was.
They were screening a 2K version at the Carolina Theater, and it's one of my personal favorites. So I was like, we need to go see this, and I'm super glad we did. Before the movie started, I was talking to you, Cleve, and you hadn't
Yes,
seen the
you
movie
were.
at all.
You knew nothing about this when we walked in.
Zero.
You knew nothing. So I asked you what you thought it was about.
And my response was, okay, well, it's called The Stuff. I'd seen the poster, and it looked pretty spooky with the goo coming out of the face. And I was like, okay, well, it's probably like a thing-like horror from outer space. And
the
you also asked me
posters-
where it was set, and I said probably like Southern California was my guess. So like, I was actually thinking this was going to be a 50s or 60s film. I wasn't expecting 70s. 80s even.
80s,
You're right.
yeah.
Yeah, very 80s. This is a very 80s movie.
Yeah.
My bad. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was expecting like an invasion movie. The extraterrestrials start taking over people's bodies with goo or some shit. And I was so pleasantly wrong. Like, so delightfully wrong.
I suppose in some ways you were kind of right with like alien forces.
I mean, that's about where it stops, though.
Infesting people. But
Yeah, I would say that after the movie's over, and this is not even my first time seeing it, I am not any more clear on a lot of the details of the movie than before it starts.
oh, well, that's the thing.
It has
it really doesn't matter in this movie.
It has a very chaotic sort of logic. It is written and directed by Larry Cohen, who has done a couple of other campy horror classics.
Oh, absolutely.
Like God Told Me To, which is a very fun film. And
It's Alive.
It's Alive, probably his most famous film about a demonic baby. I have not seen the original, but there was a mid-2000s remake that I took a girl on a date to see, and it was bad. It was a bad movie.
The originals
and a bad
are fun.
date.
The originals were fun. I think the third one is like
He also did that
on
one,
a
yeah.
tropical island.
Yes.
So it's like all Hawaiian vacation themed, but you have a killer baby on the loose. It's fun.
If I hadn't seen this last film, I wouldn't have been able to picture that so clearly. But
Right?
now I can,
Yeah.
thanks to this
Larry
previous
Cohen
film.
strikes a interesting balance for me between giallo films and trauma films.
Oh,
it is
that's
well
a great
said.
way of putting
Well
it.
said.
Yeah.
It is neither of those things, but clearly referencing both. I had just Giallo on the mind in general because they showed a preview before the film for Demons,
which was released around the same time as this.
Yeah, the whole thing was, this is what you would have seen a preview for in the theater if you had gone to see the stuff when it came out, which is cool. I like that the Carolina does that.
Yeah.
But I know that Demons is a Dario Argento produced film by another Italian filmmaker.
Bava.
A different Bava, not Mario Bava. But
Umberto, I believe.
Bava.
Lamberto Bava, I think you're right.
I think that's their first name. It's Bava Yaga.
But, okay, that's a pretty good one.
Thank you.
It's got a couple of scenes that are completely ADR'd, much like a Giallo film, especially that first scene on the boat when we see, or when we're introduced to our protagonist, Mo Rutherford.
Which is played by Michael Moriarty, who does
He's awesome.
a pretty excellent job.
I think he's hands down the best actor in the film.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the character actors are really great in this movie as well.
I mean,
you have
you
have bit parts from people like Danny Aiello, who we saw in like Jacob's Ladder. We have Garrett
Morris. Who
Morris.
does Chocolate Chip Charlie, who is a really great
Who's great,
character.
yeah. And the character actor who really steals the show, in my opinion, is Paul Sorvino.
He's fantastic. He comes in very late in the film, but is definitely a dominating presence.
But when he does, he comes in strong.
For like the last 20 minutes. Yeah, I would say that the character actors are good. A lot of the other acting in the movie is very bad.
Well, here's the beauty of it, though. There is no middle ground. Yeah, it is. Yeah. The actors are either so great, they're just delightful, or they are so bad, they're good. I was never once left lukewarm on it.
Well,
I was always giggling.
I think the most egregiously bad actor is the kid.
Yes, oh my god.
But it's
good though.
A funny
it's good.
bad performance.
Yeah,
it's
for
not
once.
An insufferable performance.
One of the rare examples of that.
It helps because he's such an erratic character. Like, he sees the stuff move in his fridge one time at 4:00 in the morning.
And that's enough.
And it drives him completely insane.
Yeah, and in the next scene, we see him destroying a supermarket over it.
The whole situation with the boy and his family felt like something out of a Tommy Wiseau film. Like, none of the parents, the brother, that whole sequence felt devoid of logic. Whereas, like, the rest of the movie, like, had something, like, it felt tied together, but the dialogue in those sequences was just nonsense. Like, and the delivery was so stilted, and I loved it.
Oh yeah, well,
I loved it for it. Anytime from here on out, you hear me like describe something as bad, it is by no means a complaint. I loved this movie front to back, like for the good and for the bad.
Generally, I agree with you. I think that there is a lot of bad in this movie, but the kind of bad that makes it fun. That it's sincerely made. I think that the stuff is a really clever idea, but the movie is bad. Definitely good bad.
Very good.
I will say Larry Cohen is a clever enough director that I think he elevates the material a little bit.
Yes.
I agree, and it has a degree of self-awareness.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like it's trying to be a good movie, but it's also not trying to be a so bad it's good movie.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It knows what it is, that it's a kind of cheap, hokey, dumb movie, but it revels in that.
Well, yeah,
and even then, like, the production quality, it's
that's what makes me
like,
think of a trauma film.
Yeah, like it's hardly even like B level, like it's edging into C. Like, you've got like all the product sequences, like they're like every scene is at like a very new location. It goes all over the place. You've got the big trucks with the stuff logos on it and like the larger crews. It's like C budget. Like, it has value. Like, a lot of it is done trashily to my utter delight.
Like, it has the right stuff, so to speak, but it is a lot of times is handled very poorly.
Yeah, well, I think
to good comedic effect. Particularly, I think the editing is really terrible.
Oh, it's awful. I love it.
It's very fun to watch because of that, though. Like Black Dynamite does a really good job of imitating that kind of bad editing, where it just straight up ignores continuity several times. A character will
Jarring.
will go from one position to a completely different position without like a transition between those two.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complete mess.
Like,
but
my favorite is like the pickup truck towards the end of the film. They park it in like an abandoned field. And then when the lead actress returns to the pickup truck, we don't get an establishing shot or any explanation for why. We get her opening the door to the truck and like the evil guy popping out like up close. And then it pulls back a little bit to like a mid shot. And we see that the truck is crashed in a ditch. And we have no idea how it got there. We don't know anything about that. We didn't know it was when she was opening the door. There's just no regard for setting the scene. Like, it just cuts and we don't even realize we're in that scene when it starts. Wow.
Well, the thing I think that makes it more forgivable, in my opinion, is even though the editing is pretty bad and all over the place, the pacing of the movie on a larger scale is pretty good.
Pretty good.
Like,
Oh, it's like the movie's Drunk and Running.
yeah, exactly.
Well, the next scene. Oh, I'll do this.
I think
it's all over the
Got a
goddamn
little
place.
bit of that maximum overdrive cocaine energy.
Lots of that, I would say. It's the 80s.
Yeah.
I think also that Larry Cohen is a little bit better of a writer than he is a director.
Yeah.
I think that the ideas driving the film are pretty sharp.
Yeah.
It is his statement on consumerism, which from filmmakers of that era is nothing new. Like, that was the whole point of Dawn of the Dead. But Larry Cohen really intended this as more of a satire.
Succeeded, in my opinion.
As we saw before the film, he was kind of upset that the film was marketed as like a horror film because he doesn't really consider it that.
Well, and the production company, I think it was Universal, was upset at him because he didn't make it.
They wanted a more
straight monster movie,
a traditional monster movie,
which
Would have been awful.
Yeah, it would have been awful. Killer whip dessert, like
no.
you can't make a straight-faced horror movie.
No, you
about
have to
that.
be laughing with the audience
and that's
for
the
that
thing.
to work.
I'm so glad they didn't do that because I think honestly the weakest part of this movie is the monster.
Oh, it's the weakest, but it's also my favorite.
It's fun, but it has no established logic. It has no rules, really.
No, even when we go to see like the giant
Sometimes
place where it's being mined, it's just a mindless goo.
Sometimes it's a sentient blob-style monster. Sometimes it's like brainwashed people. Sometimes it's just whipped cream. And there is no indication.
It's so formless.
There is no indication of when it is any of those things except that the scene at that moment demands it, and it makes for a lot of individually very entertaining sequences, which ultimately saves the film from being a disaster because it is entertaining to watch. But the logic is, similarly with the editing, it's just not really there.
Yeah, well,
just
that's
doesn't
the
really
thing. I think
exist.
conceptually it works better than in practice,
Yeah.
like the details of it. Because I think what Larry Cohen is saying with some of the anti-consumerist messaging in it is really sharp, especially with
Totally.
like all the cut to commercial jingles.
You'd expect there to be like one can't get enough of the stuff jingle and then to just play it 4 or 5 times throughout, but no, there are 4 or 5 original jingles in this movie about this stuff, and sometimes they're just heard lightly in the background once. Such an absurd attention to detail or you wouldn't expect it, and every one of those jingles is a bop.
Yeah, they're great. They're fantastic. Mole Rutherford, Michael Moriarty's character, kind of sums it up near the beginning of the movie on the boat where someone says, "You're smarter than you let on or than you look."
Yeah, he says you're not. I think you're not as dumb as you look. And he responds, "Nobody's as dumb as I look."
And I think that's a perfect mission statement for this movie.
Nice boilerplate.
It is, and
Because-
it's perfect, and it perfectly encapsulates him too, because he's a con man. Like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
His business is corporate sabotage.
Look stupid as a form of sleight of hand.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think
But have
you're-
actual, like, subversive
it's in
commentary,
it's in like the second or third scene of the movie, and I think that it's the perfect tone setter, because not only is it just a really clever line that like gets a laugh out of everybody, the whole theater laughed when he said
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
It's my favorite line of the movie for sure. But then it's also like, okay, the rest of this movie is gonna look pretty stupid, but there's more going on than is on
than
the,
meets
is on
the
the
eye,
surface.
yeah.
More than meets the eye.
And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, and the whole idea of the stuff being kind of a placeholder for consumerism where enough is never really enough.
Right.
And people are just literally consumed by the inside from, just not stopping and
Right.
continuing to purchase.
Or giving into the cycle.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's some clever ideas there.
Oh, for sure. It's a real blast. Just to put a little cap on the perspective, like the kooky characters, I went in expecting a horror movie, and what I got was almost like a Mel Brooks level of comedy. Like the characters are really do border on these hyper archetypes. They're just absurdly loud. I loved it. Like I just adored how weird like everyone on screen was all of the time.
Well, what I really love is that there's no sort of like righteous perspective in this movie. Like it's a commentary on consumerism, but there's really nobody like shaking a finger at you the whole time. Like,
thank God.
Mo is a fucking con man. He's inherently a sleazy person. He even says, like, they call me Mo because whenever anybody gives me anything, I always want Mo. So even he is a symbol for greed, just like the stuff is.
Yeah.
And the love interest, who is thrown in there very abruptly, but Nicole, who's played by Andrea Marcovici, she's like the lead marketer for the stuff. She is the reason that it has become so big. And, she kind of feels some remorse about that. And then you've got, like, fucking Chocolate Chip Charlie, who's literally only in it as revenge for that company, like, buying up his company and running him out of
His
it.
whole comedy bit with like the bad kung fu is so good.
And then the fucking...
His fists are a lethal weapon, as he says.
Right. And then fucking Paul Sorvino, who plays the Colonel later, is like a totally disgusting, reprehensible, like...
He's a
picture
militia
perfect
man,
libertarian douchebag. Yeah.
They talk about him like getting caught with an underage girl and like so prescient.
He calls Chocolate Chip Charlie colored man at one
Yikes.
point and
Big
threatens
yikes.
to blow his brains out, like just openly racist.
And that's the thing, like
it's like these are all of our main characters.
we saw this in the theater, and when that happened, like we heard some like worried sounds in the crowd.
Oh yeah, multiple
from
times.
that.
It's just like everyone's just like, ooh.
Yeah. Yes, it's a racist character, but of course the libertarian militiaman is an awful racist.
Right.
Like, you don't want him to be a good woke character.
No,
Like,
absolutely not. And so, like, the only character that you could consider like pure and good in this movie is the kid, but he's super fucking annoying and he
the
sucks.
worst.
He sucks ass. So there's nobody
and
like,
I mean,
preaching at all.
if
in
he's
this movie,
if
you
he's
know?
good, he's pretty fucking chaotic good. Like,
Oh my God.
going into a grocery store and just destroying everything inside.
When he fucking smashes the grocery store is great. There's no logic to the way that they arrange their products.
No, it's the
'Cause he,
stuff
like-
is in like 5 different sections of the store.
Yeah, it's like in the dairy section, and
Sometimes
then it's
refrigerated,
just,
sometimes
not.
yeah, in the freezer, and then also just sitting out, and just like him running through the store with like a broom, just like screaming, just knocking
rake,
over
yeah.
a rake. That's right, and just like smashing every carton of the stuff. He can find. It's
My
really
favorite
funny.
was, and it's so quintessentially 80s, because like we grew up on like those 80s toy ads, and during that sequence he's smashing everything, and it cuts to 2 employees like pointing over, and behind them there's this like perfect pyramid of like stacked the stuff containers, and it's like, oh, that's going over, and like my whole 80s like childhood was just like ready for that, like that perfectly stacked thing to get knocked over by the toy.
100%.
Like, it was great.
Well, one of those supermarket attendants was actually a cameo from Eric Bogosian, who's a great character actor who's been in stuff like Talk Radio and Succession. He's in Uncut Gems coming out in a couple months. really underrated guy. He has maybe one line in this movie, but it was kind of funny to see him. But yeah, like when he's destroying the pyramid of stuff, or like going down the aisle with like a broom, just knocking all of them over. It's so much fun.
And also because, like we mentioned before, he only does this because he goes down to the fridge for a midnight snack at the beginning and he sees the stuff moving on its own. That's like the moment in a Lovecraft story when the protagonist like reads some forbidden knowledge and it just like shatters their sanity.
Yeah.
That's all it takes for this kid, because the rest of the movie he is just...
That's all the evidence he needs.
Right, he's just totally manic and hell-bent on destroying the stuff.
It's like just one more piece of exposition would have been enough, of the stuff. But nope, no, didn't even get that. Just total hard turn. And again, the way his family talks, like they don't sound like real people. And to a certain degree, like you could say that it's the people who are taken by the stuff
body snatchers
are, like acting strange, but everyone in this movie, like a lot of people just act poorly, like regardless of that.
But
the
family is
the
most explicitly like body snatchers, where the idea is they're like mind controlled by the stuff. And they're trying to force him to eat it, to join them or whatever.
Right, which is one of those things where it's like, is the stuff puppeting them? Are they mind controlled? What is it? Because multiple times we see the stuff like leave people's bodies and it just leaves behind like husks, corpses.
Yeah, it like eats people from the inside.
Which is those are some of the coolest effects.
Yeah,
in the movie.
They're great.
I have a solution for it. But I'm not saying I would want this in the movie, because I think it's better that it's not in there. But a solution would have been to have, like, during the climactic sequence of him seeing the stuff pit, them alluding to some degree of sentience at that point, and, like, it vibrates and says something, or, like a weird...
That's the confusing...
Like, head pops up from it and does something. And we get another thing that it has a plan, but...
That's the confusing thing, because
I'm glad it's not there.
Big masses of the stuff straight up do just move on their own and attack people at certain times. My favorite scene of the movie is the motel scene.
That scene's great.
Where they discover that their pillowcases and the mattress have been filled with the stuff, and it
out of the blue.
It attacks them in the middle of the night. No, it doesn't make any sense, but it's fucking great.
I love how
it's my favorite. It's my favorite example of practical effects in the movie.
Yeah,
because the way they have it like firing out is they've obviously pivoted
the room.
A rotating.
It's a Nightmare on Elm Street kind of effect where it's just pushing them into the corner.
Right, where they've clearly built the room to rotate and fixed the camera to the floor.
Yeah, I don't think they built it to rotate. I think that they built a separate set of it on its side.
They for sure built it to rotate because it changed. The stuff changes direction.
Yeah.
Like at times it is going straight at the wall and then it creeps up to the ceiling. So it's obvious that it is what they did for the hallway fight scene in Inception which is the example of that trick that everybody always points to, but it's been done
like
a million
Nightmare on
times
Elm
before
Street
that.
is a great example of that as well, with her, going to the
being thrown onto the ceiling and stuff. Yeah, exactly.
One of my favorite parts of the motel scene is it comes out of their pillow and immediately like grabs onto Moe's face.
Yeah, like the face hugger.
Like a face hugger almost. And the response of the girl is to immediately grab oil and set it on fire on his face.
Because there's conveniently a gas lamp in the motel room. Yeah, that's her first instinct is to dump oil all over his face and light it on fire. It works.
Luckily for him.
Another confusing thing is in that scene, like the guy who runs the motel like comes in to attack them because he's presumably under the control of the stuff. But
then he gets eaten by the stuff. They throw him into the big blob of stuff and it like eats him. So that was another...
Great. It's great. It's an awesome effect. But it was just, once again, me being like, what's going on here?
I like to think
What's happening?
that guy wasn't actually controlled by the stuff, and he was just like the motel guy, and he was just running in to like stop them from setting the room on fire.
He tried to attack them when he came in.
Well, maybe because like they're setting the room on fire, and like why are they doing that? And he's trying to get him to stop.
Poor dude.
Yeah, right. Just a random, it's an innocent bystander trying to help.
They've already established that everybody in the town is.
I know.
Because that's where the factory is.
Well, it's funny because I think it was actually before when they're running away from the convenience store, I think, after that guy, there's a group of them chasing them. And we'd never really seen the effect of the stuff really until like one of them swings at, I think it was Mo or Chocolate Chip, and in response, they like counter and hit the dude in the face, and it just caves
his whole face just like crumbles in.
Yeah,
that's very cool. And a few times we see like people getting shot, and like the stuff is coming out of their wounds instead of blood, so they're just like full of marshmallow fluff.
Yeah. Just like
it's very funny.
Yeah, like great squibs. Yeah, the practical effects are delightfully bad. Also, the really wonderfully unfortunate green screens.
That's the thing.
Those are rough.
It's funny because
bad,
the only times I've seen this movie outside of the theater were on a smaller screen. You could tell the green screen wasn't great, but it wasn't as egregiously
bad
as
on
it is
the big
on the
screen. Yeah,
on
I
the
was
big
surprised.
screen.
I didn't remember that from the last time I saw it.
The perspective is wrong at times. Like there's camera shake around the character. Like it's pretty bad. Like in the radio room, where they have stuff like, pit where they mat like the giant pool of stuff into the set.
The most egregious
it's like the camera's like bobbing a little bit and the stuff isn't.
When the kid is in the truck.
Oh yeah,
and it just obviously has
really
a green.
There's like no reason for it too. Just like have the stuff flowing towards the kid.
Right.
Like what?
Yeah.
There's no reason to have a green screen there.
It's very confusing. But in the radio booth, when the stuff is attacking Nicole and the kid, Mo is like trying to smash the glass to get into the radio booth, and it's very obvious that the glass is green screen, and
because he swings again after he breaks it.
He smashes it, and the glass shatters, and then he swings at it again.
Yeah,
it reminds me of the scene in Jaws 3D when the shark smashes through the green screen glass in slow motion into the underwater station. It looks terrible.
Yeah, it's so funny. The CG in the radio room is so funny to me because it's preceded by maybe the best practical effect in the movie with Chocolate Chip Charlie's transformation.
Yeah.
Like, it's the most visceral practical of him, his head just kind of expanding and getting monstrous. And then it's just followed up by some of the worst CG.
The Chocolate Chip Charlie stuff, like the practical effects even are rough. Like it's just like so clearly like a shitty puppet like that's getting warped around, and it looks so fun.
I think it looks great.
I think it looks great. Yeah,
but it doesn't look
gnarly
real.
on the inside too.
I think part of the reason it doesn't look real is because it's lit very brightly.
Yes.
In something like The Thing, where you see those
and it
practical
holds
effects,
on it.
it's always in the shadows. It's usually obscured by some goo or something.
And I think the craftsmanship to that.
I think it looks pretty good.
I think it looks pretty good.
There are a couple of times where we see the stuff like come out of people and their mouth kind of like distends freakishly. That scene is like the biggest example of it.
Yeah.
But it happens a couple of times. I think that every time that happens, it looks pretty good.
Okay, so like
especially
the first couple of shots with him, like before he gets too distended, like no, they do look quite good. But like after the stuff comes out of him and like his head like twists and contorts like that, but it's like paper mache. Like it.
I mean,
I didn't think it looked that bad.
Yeah, I don't think it looked that bad.
It might just
got
be
some
it might just be a comparison to like the really bad compositing of the green screen stuff.
Yeah.
I'm willing to be more forgiving of it because I've been, especially by that point in the movie, I've been bombarded by some really, really bad compositing.
Oh yeah, and don't get me wrong, it was getting laughs out of me. Like I loved it.
It's a fun creature effect,
Yeah, I don't think it's
regardless.
that
Well, especially compared to like a lot of B movies movies of this era. There's so much more craftsmanship to something like that than
Oh God,
You know,
yeah,
like-
I applaud it.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Overall,
the movie clearly had some budget. It's the editing is really just
It's nightmarish, and the audio just
yeah.
like drops out. Like the audio quality like just drops out occasionally.
all the ADR is just
yeah. There's a lot of
Fun.
ADR that is
because most of the time it syncs up somewhat well, but there's some times where it just
And there's-
does not.
And there's plenty of scenes where they are using on-set audio,
yeah.
but like I'm sure the reason they did the whole scene on the boat is because it's probably windy as fuck.
Well, I think
and that's better than
in the middle of a scene, they were transitioning between on set and then like post audio, like at times.
On
like
the
there
boat?
was not on the
Oh,
boat, but
no,
like
okay, yeah, I was
throughout
gonna
the
say.
film, like they're just like just in the middle of a scene, like you'd hear like the background noise change, like
Yeah.
between a piece of
a lot of
dialogue
it
or
during
something.
during action scenes too.
Yeah.
You know. Speaking of the action, I love, you already mentioned a little bit, Ben, but the fight with Mo and Chocolate Chip Charlie against the Stuffies.
Yeah.
In the little
great.
down Virginia town.
Chocolate Chip Charlie, especially.
He's so fun. I wish he was in more of the movie.
Yes.
Agreed. Not
He
enough.
goes to Washington D.C. for basically no reason.
Yes.
And then just comes back after achieving nothing.
We did see that in the pre-credits for the movie that the theater put out that Larry Cohen wanted Arsenio Hall for that role originally.
Yeah, and it would be young Arsenio before he was big and everything.
Well, yeah, the reason they didn't is because they wanted somebody more recognizable, so they went with Garrett Morris. But I would argue from a modern perspective, and maybe I'm just uneducated, but I would recognize Arsenio Hall much quicker than I would recognize Garrett
especially
Morris.
nowadays, yeah.
Right? So I do think that that's funny, and I mean, also in 2019, like, what is Arsenio Hall doing? He's at this point, he's like a D-list celeb.
Yeah. I think they tried to revive his talk show for like a couple months. Didn't go well.
Damn, Arsenio, you gotta figure out how to stay relevant. You can't just
Yeah.
go the Montel
I think he was
route.
on The Celebrity Apprentice back when Trump was doing it. That says all that needs to be said.
So, yeah, so did Dennis Rodman, and now he's like boys with Kim Jong Un. That's like his thing now.
What a weird world. One thing we mentioned after the movie that I wanted to dissect a little bit is you mentioned, Cleve,
Yes.
how like this movie would be a perfect movie to be remade.
It's ripe for it, and my
For once, I agree.
yeah, and it's not an opinion I ever have. I'm generally not one for the soft reboot, and I'm as tired of Remember This remakes as everyone else. But for this specific film, the message is just as relevant, and
Maybe more
the
so.
style of the movie is so in vogue right now. I know to get into this point more too, so it's a nice segue. The marketing of the stuff within the movie is so delicious. Like, it's so quintessentially 80s. Like all of the ads have like 80s models with like wearing bikinis with like the fur coats, and the Stuff logo has that nice like 60s pop art style to
They're
it, and the
eating
music
the
is all
stuff
like
very sexually.
has like and like the
there's
music
a-
is like very like electronica like influenced pop, and it's so just dripping and gooey with like the 80s aesthetic that I just wanted to hear like new retro wave like mixes of the pop songs, and God, I could just see the whole thing. Oh, I want it. I want it so bad.
What's so funny about it to me is, well, I definitely agree with that. I think the color palette of the stuff packaging is so gross with the purple,
pink,
and brown.
and brown. Yeah,
Like, it's so gross but so 80s
Oh yeah.
that it's spot on for what
it's
they're
just
going
so
for.
delightfully 70s 80s like pop art.
Yeah,
and God, it's
Yeah,
good.
no, they go so sexual with it. With like the first jingle we hear is like one lick is never enough.
yeah.
For the stuff. But you make a good point with like how much they pull from like commercials at that time. They even had a cameo from the Where's the Beef Lady
Yeah.
at one point.
You're right. I
Yeah.
missed that. Holy shit.
Yeah, that
Where's
was the
the
only-
stuff?
Wow,
Yeah.
that's on point.
Yeah, that was really good.
And then, the escalation too of the jingles, how it starts with like one lick or whatever, and then like later on there's a whole nother pop song where it's just enough is never enough, and just like
Yeah.
just this
Yeah.
beautiful like Invader Zim level of blatant ham-fisted commentary. I loved it. I just loved it.
On that subject, they did show a preview for They Live before this movie.
Which I think pairs really well
I
with
think it
the
does
ideas
well.
of
Yeah,
this
they're
movie.
going to be showing that at the Carolina pretty soon, and I would love to go see that one.
I still
Yeah.
haven't.
We'll definitely do They Live on this podcast
Yes.
at some point.
Yes.
But
Yeah, like I was saying during that
it's-
ad, it's like Carpenter and Kurosawa are like two directors I really need to catch up on.
it's very much in the same vein with like the just like
anti-consumerist tone.
anti-consumerism, but also just very heavy-handed and in your face about it. Obey, consume.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that on a upcoming episode at
Yes,
some point.
absolutely.
But I agree. And my question for you guys, since y'all brought up the possibility of remaking this, and I think it's not a bad idea. Generally, I'm opposed to remakes, but I think that the stuff, while it is a very fun cult classic, I don't consider it sacred in the ways that a lot of
no, because
like,
it doesn't
my
consider
favorite-
itself sacred,
Well,
and
and
that's
a
the
lot
beauty.
of my favorite horror movies are that I wouldn't be like, no, how dare you try to remake the stuff. You know, I think that if it was handled correctly, it would be good. And so my sort of two-pronged question for you guys is, would you want it to adhere to the 80s aesthetic or modernize it? And what in general would you want out of a stuff remake?
Here's my bit. I think that you do a new retro wavy, like near future thing where you just don't even acknowledge chronology.
You sci-fi it.
No, near future. So like kind of like what It Follows did. You just like the girl has like a weird pocket phone.
Okay, sure.
You throw in little things like that, but you also throw in like 80s, like station wagons and things. So you never really know, and no one gives a shit, and that's part of the fun. Another reason too is not only
Well,
is
that's
the
the thing.
aesthetic in vogue, but the genre is incredibly in vogue. Horror comedy is at a height right now.
You know, these days satire is almost more powerful than ever. So I think the time for something like this is prime because it is satirizing consumer culture. And you're bringing up It Follows. I think is good because what was so great about It Follows, it evokes the 80s in the style of the filmmaking.
Yes.
And not the aesthetic.
Yes.
There's certain things about it that are like a little bit 80s nostalgic, but it feels like an 80s film because it is shot like an 80s film and paced like an 80s film. And I think for the stuff, that would be the ideal way to do it. I would shy away from a heavy-handed 80s aesthetic because Stranger Things.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
tired. It's tired.
It's-
Well,
it is
I would even
tired
play
and-
that up in the advertising of the stuff. Utilize that as commentary on how tired the new retro wave like aesthetic is getting, and
that could
play it
be-
up in
yeah,
the
that's what I
advertising
like.
in the film
Yeah.
of the stuff, and just be them like hitting it hard and it being
the
almost obnoxious to the main
advertisement-
characters.
The advertising encompasses that 80s aesthetic.
Yeah, and it's going
Yeah.
for like a Strangers thing, and like to the point of outrageous parody. So you get like the Stranger Things intro with the stuff font.
Oh,
Like that's
yeah,
what I'm
okay.
saying. Like
I'm into that,
hand-fisted,
actually.
like stuff. You know.
I'm into that.
I've been racking my brain to think who would be a good director for a stuff remake this whole time.
Let's do it ourselves, boys.
I could see.
Let's start a Patreon. Let's make a Kickstarter.
I mean,
it's that easy, right?
I think it's easy to say James Gunn could do a pretty decent job.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about him that much on this show, but-
maybe Eli Roth.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly,
I would-
Y'all might disagree, but
would
I'd
love
put in
Eli
for
Roth,
like a Joss Whedon. Honestly, like Cabin in the Woods
Ooh.
kind of stuff. You know.
Well, Joss
Like-
Whedon didn't direct Cabin.
That's right. He wrote and produced it, though, right? Didn't
I
he?
don't think he wrote it. I think he just
He only produced
Yeah.
it. Oh wow! So his name was all over it.
The,
so I just assumed.
because that's how you get people to a movie.
Yeah, well,
is
shit,
throw
I-
a recognizable name.
I
on
succumbed to that
I
tactic.
can't remember
How
who
about that?
directed. The guy who directed Bad Times at the El Royale directed Cabin in the
right,
Woods.
that's right,
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
it. Drew Goddard.
Drew
did
Goddard,
Cabin
yeah.
in the Woods. Yeah. No, Drew Goddard could be good. I think. Yeah, man. Like I think Eli Roth in his heyday would have been great for this.
Yeah.
I don't know about present day Eli Roth.
And I even know you'd cast like Alan Tudyk as the main character. Like that'd be perfect. Like
You know who would be great? Who would be great is getting Neville Dean and Taylor to do it.
Oh,
after
dude,
Mom
that
and
would be
Dad a couple years
awesome.
ago, like
Neville Dean and Taylor would do great.
yeah.
Here's my really wild card one who I think would actually do it really well. Harmony Korine.
oh yes.
Yeah, I can see that too.
I want that.
Harmony Korine.
it's
Harmony
the
Korine
stuff.
doing a satirical horror film would be so good.
It's such a weird concept too that I could see him doing
Oh,
something like
I
that.
think
God,
he would,
yes.
I think he would do it really well.
Yeah.
I think Harmony Korine would kill it.
Oh yeah, and you just get like a weird like A-list celebrity to play. Oh, it'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, I could see the whole thing working in a Harmony Korine format. Like
Yeah.
would be exquisite. I love it. I love this idea.
Because it's weird enough that like you could get away with the more surreal aspects of Harmony Korine's style, and it wouldn't feel out of place. He does the nostalgia aesthetic pretty damn well, while it's still feeling modern. And he's a
like
fucking
Spring Breakers,
and he's
man.
a great character director. He's
Yeah.
a great character
I
director.
think that's the one. I think that's the one.
Yeah.
It's an interesting pick.
I don't think it would ever happen.
no,
but
but we can
Greenlight
dream.
it.
We can dream.
like, yeah, that would be amazing.
All right, sign our petition if you want Harmony Korine to direct a stuff remake.
We need probably what, like $20 million?
2%
Yeah,
of
come on,
our
it'll be
future
easy, guys.
Patreon earnings will go towards the Harmony Korine
The Harmony
directing
Korine
the stuff
remaking the
fund.
stuff.
That's right.
Do y'all have anything else, or is it time to rate?
Oh, I think we've about covered all the bases.
Yeah, I really don't have much more to say.
All right, Ben. Well, this was your pick, so you start.
Well, this is a movie that has plenty of flaws. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but it is near perfect for me. It's super fun. I love its corniness and directness in its themes at times. It's a perfect example of a B movie that's elevated to something better than just a B movie, in my opinion. Larry Cohen's great. If you haven't seen any of his other stuff, check out It's Alive. And I watched a movie a couple weeks ago called Bone by him as well. It's like a home invasion movie meets Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Weird.
Yeah, starring Yaphet Kotto.
Oh, excellent. I would also recommend God Told Me Too. I
Yes,
think that's
yeah.
a pretty fun film as well.
But yeah, he has a lot of great work under his belt. Super under-recognized director. This is one of my favorite of his. It's super fun. I would definitely recommend seeing it if you have the chance. I'm gonna give it a 4.5.
Cleveland.
When this movie is on, it's great. When it's off, it's great. It was more rare for me to not be chuckling while this movie was on, consistently giggling. Like it was just like 2 hours of me just in my chair, like nonstop. I had so much fun watching this movie, guys. 5 stars. Like I loved the shit
Wow,
out of this
all
film.
right.
Like easy. It's an easy 5 for me. I adore this movie and would gladly see it again. No complaints. When it's bad, it's delightful. When it's good, it's delightful.
Yeah, it is a delightful film. I think it's a pretty bad movie in a lot of ways,
Oh,
but
yeah, it's the worst.
but bad in ways that I really enjoy. Like I said, it's not sacred for me, but it's a damn good time. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. Which will give us an average of 4.5 out of 5 pods for the stuff. Next week, we're jumping back to present day, and we will be finally talking about one of our collectively most anticipated films of the
Present
year.
day in release, but not in location.
Right.
Yeah.
The Lighthouse is coming out, finally. The
Yes.
sophomore film of Robert Eggers, director of The Witch, one of our favorite films on the show. And goddamn, we've all been waiting for this movie forever.
A year.
And it's finally time. It's finally
so
happening.
ready.
So next week, tune back in with us to hear our discussion of The Lighthouse.
Quick housekeeping. We finally have results on 3 from Hell.
Oh yes, I
after all
finally
that
saw a
time.
trailer for Three from Hell.
Yeah,
Still haven't.
oddly enough.
It's actually been getting surprisingly good reviews.
Yeah. It's
We'll definitely need to get
all
around to
over
it
the
at some
place.
point, especially considering that Sid Haig just died. I don't know if we
Yeah.
mentioned that on the show. R.I.P.
R.I.P.
The fucking legend.
the only box office release was for like the 1 week of Fathom events that it did.
yeah.
But it did 1.8 million in that time. Way lower than any of us would guess. Mostly because it was in like only a handful of theaters. I think it's already on video on demand
Yeah.
as well. But Cleve, you won that with
Hey!
you guessed 4 million.
Does that put us back in a tie?
Yes, it does.
Oh, yes!
You and Tease,
Yeah, and then you're one
7.
ahead, right?
And then
awesome.
in terms of Rotten Tomatoes score, it is currently sitting at 45.
45.
And
oh wow, that's surprising. I've actually
I
heard good
guessed-
things.
46.
Oh my
So,
god.
I got that one again. So it's 7 to 11.
Oh my god. He's
Well,
4 ahead of
Oh
us.
my god. Wait, really? 4?
Yeah, I'm 4 ahead. And we have 2 more movies confirmed to come out this year.
Oh, so it looks
So-
like you've cemented your
No,
whole...
no, 2 movies, which means 4 points.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
right. So there's a small
There's a
small
there's a
chance.
chance.
There's a small chance. But it's not looking so
not looking
good.
great.
I'll be somewhat merciful and at least pick fun movies if I win.
I just love that I am still the person who knows the least, if not nothing, about Three from Hell. And I what? Just-
Yeah, you guessed the lowest box office.
I have no idea about this movie. I couldn't tell you anything about it right now. I know you've talked about it and you've explained
you know
it to
the
me.
Devil's Rejects, right?
I have heard the name.
Okay.
I know literally nothing, boys.
Go back and listen to our Rob Zombie episode before you were on the show, and that'll tell you everything you need to know about our thoughts on the rest of that trilogy. Yeah, we'll get around to Three from Hell at some point. I definitely want to see it. I'm kind of surprised it's that low on Rotten Tomatoes because I've actually heard some pretty good reviews. Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Well, yeah, and the next 2 movies we predicted are coming out next weekend.
Oh shit! So we'll know ahead
Zombieland,
of
Double
time.
Tap, and The Lighthouse. We probably won't have results until the week after the
Which is
Lighthouse
fine.
episode.
But
we'll know.
when we predicted Zombieland 2, I was very on the fence about whether I wanted to cover it because I like the first Zombieland. After seeing the trailers for this new one, I don't want to watch this one, boys. It looks
I
really
don't
bad.
really want to watch it
We'll
either,
cover the
honestly.
results, but I don't want to see that movie. It looks really fucking terrible.
I'm open to it, but
I
Not
would
in theaters.
I would rather just watch and talk about the original than going to see the fucking new one. It looks so terrible. But anyway, so yeah, holy shit, our predictions are coming to an end somewhat early this year.
Quite
so
soon, yeah.
we'll be able to have early results on that within the
I
next
think
couple
there
weeks.
were 2 movies that didn't end up coming out this year. So, The Grudge remake,
Once again.
2 years in a row. It is confirmed to come out in January of next year.
Honestly, for that one, I would say since it is coming out in January, so they say, I think our predictions should just carry over.
Yeah, I was gonna just keep it for next year. And then New Mutants, which in the same respect, it's confirmed for next
I
year.
completely forgot about it.
Well, that movie was originally supposed to come out last year, and
Yeah, there were trailers for it last
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
What happened? What?
yeah, and that one's scheduled to come out in like summer next year. So I'm just gonna carry that one over as well.
Perfect.
It's coming to an end quick, and we have a whole host of predictions for next year coming out very soon.
if you're wondering what happened with New Mutants, I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess it's probably the same sort of developmental issues that like Venom and Deadpool hit, almost certainly.
If they push it back that long, that 100% means reshoots.
Yeah.
They're for sure.
Yeah, because the movie was done.
It was
in
done.
2018.
Yeah, like they were putting out trailers for it. I remember when those
Yeah.
were circulating, and then it just disappeared.
Ooh, sounds like we got a Marvel Suicide Squad on our hands, boys.
The reshoots makes me nervous.
Oh, man.
Because like the trailer, I thought like it could be fun, like Marvel horror. Like I'm into the idea.
In theory. On paper.
But if we look at other recent movies that have had like major reshoots, like remaking like 90% of the film, Also Disney properties like Solo.
Solo, exactly. That was about to say.
Venom got a hard recut.
That wasn't Disney though. That was Sony.
That's right.
You know, I don't have high hopes for any movie that they send back into production for that long.
Nope.
It's rarely for the better. But I guess we'll find out eventually.
Yeah, and it's such a trend to like, but mostly it's been a trend with DC films, like recontextualizing the movie after it's shot for marketing reasons. Like, for instance, like the Justice League movie, how they like recolored the film and tried to make it more like Joss Whedon Marvel-y and more like saccharine.
Well, that's just because Zack Snyder is a dumb hack who thinks entertainment is just making 3-hour gray boring movies.
That's a pretty hot take, Ben. You're gonna offend.
yeah.
I don't think that is
Four whole people with
I
it.
don't think that's a very hot take. I agree with you 100%.
But those 4 people could be our listeners.
I mean, next year we're getting a Zack Snyder horror movie.
At least
his
that's like relevant to his
best
style.
Movie is the Dawn of the Dead remake.
Oh, absolutely,
so,
no doubt.
you know, maybe that's
like a
where
decade ago.
his niche over a decade.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where his niche
see.
lies.
Oh
But,
yeah, he's going back to the pool of zombies.
right. You know, because it's easy. Who doesn't love a good zombie flick? Am I right, boys?
Oh yeah, that sure is still relevant.
Well, on the subject of mindless consumerism, we got to get our paycheck too. I think it's time to go to the sponsor shelf and check out our sponsor for the day. Cleveland,
Yeah.
who's giving us money this week?
Well, so after bowing and kowtowing a little before the sponsor shelf,
like you do.
I had to make another trip, actually, and that was to the fridge to get our product.
That's a pretty short trip.
This time, our product is sometimes contained in fridges. It's called Go-Girth. It's a yogurt, but it's for the big and tall. Are you on the run, but you need a little extra fun, and a Go-Gurt tube isn't enough? Check out Go-Girth. It's like a Go-Gurt tube, but wider. Because everyone knows it's all about the circumference and not the length of the tube. Go-Girth. Enjoy a nice splattering of our tasty beverage.
All over your face.
That isn't really a beverage, but whatever, it's in the script. Go-Girth. I'm not saying it again.
Thanks everybody for listening to our episode on The Stuff by Go-Girth. Oh shit.
It was me. It's okay. You can say it as many times as you want, but I'm
Okay.
contractually obligated to only say it so many times.
I don't want to take any unnecessary risks. I don't want to invoke any eldritch energies from saying it too many times. So buy that product. After you buy that product, then traipse on down to Apple Podcasts and
But you have to traipse.
You have to traipse.
You cannot walk. You cannot run. You must traipse.
Traipse, a sachet is also acceptable.
At times, but it has to be during the harvest cycle.
But once you get down there, look for the stars. There should be 5 of them. Make sure that you smash all 5.
No more, no less.
No less. And while you're there, carve in some inconceivable runes a review of our show
Where you carve them, that's up to you.
on Apple Podcasts.
Or your flesh. I'm not going to stop them. Flesh-based advertising, I mean, that's a free market right now,
Well,
man.
whatever you write on Apple Podcasts is inexplicably carved into your flesh.
Yeah, it
as you
happens
write.
as you write it. Yeah.
I will put it on the record that we'll give 50% of our sponsor shelf earnings to anyone who gets a Pod People tattoo on their forehead.
And we are the highest paid podcast in the world.
It is objectively true.
Yes.
Yep. Everyone knows this fact.
And what they also know is that we're hiding it all from the IRS.
Yep.
The pod people committed to committing tax fraud.
Yep.
You can also follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod or on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/PodPeoplePod, where you can find the entire list of all of the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and the links to those episodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Mr. Van Awesome, where I'm not committing tax fraud.
Hey, if it worked for Al Capone.
Yeah, he turned out all right.
Yeah, he was fine.
To this day.
He's been cemented in history.
Where can they find you, boys?
I'm on Twitter at Mr. Sheets.
I'm occasionally tweeting Al Capone propaganda via Light Arch Studios. And rarely tweeting for It Stares Back. That's because I don't need to. Go on, check it out yourself on Steam.
It's more mysterious when you don't tweet about it.
That's right. That's how that works. And it's not that I'm busy and I have a life. But yeah, no, we're also occasionally out on Reddit doing AMAs and shit and doing little posts there. We're all over the place. But the point is, we have a growing following and people are starting to give a shit and it's great.
Join our Discord.
Yeah, be one of those people. Join in on the spooky fun and use your army to conquer across the great tapestry.
Yeah, do the thing. Follow that Twitter account. Find the game on Steam. Join our Discord at lightarcstudio.com. You know, all of those good things. I think that's the last of it. That's the last of our duties. So I'm going to go unwind with a big old bowl of the taste. It would be a waste if you didn't eat the taste.